I'd love to help you get vulnerable. Let's get naked.
Welcome to the Let's Get Naked podcast. Today we're getting naked with my brother, Keith Westendorf. It's a little bit weird to say that because obviously, because he's my brother and that's weird, but so is our entire relationship and family, and so we're going to kind of dive into some of that today. So welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it is. So some of the things that I wanted to talk about are just kind of our relationship as we've, become adults, and some of the stuff from, when we were kids, things that go into making you who you are as a person, as well as, things that you're doing for yourself to level up in your life and be the best version of you that you can be. The podcast is about vulnerability and really being able to connect with people. I think a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about really offers a lifeline to people, because a lot of people feel like they're on an island up by themselves with the stuff that they deal with. You've dealt with lots of shit. We've dealt with lots of shit, in our upbringing and other things. We laugh and joke around about that, and there's a lot of fun that comes with that. But I think as we've gone through our lives together, it's interesting to watch other people from the outside see that and really be able to connect with that, because we are so open and vulnerable about stuff. I think it's pretty exciting to continue to learn together as siblings, and just how to navigate really emotional intelligence, how to be amazing to each other, how to say, hey, you messed up and you hurt my feelings, or like any of that kind of stuff. And so I think that that's a big part of stuff that I wanted to talk about today. So, if you don't mind, I'm just going to kind of dive into.
Go right ahead.
Yeah. So for our listeners, our family dynamic was one where our parents, who are still married, had 5 kids. We have my oldest sister, then my next oldest sister, then I'm the middle child, then we have my brother Brennan, and then Keith is the baby. So, which is pretty funny. And if I call him Tony, it's because I call him Tony, and so it's really weird to be calling him Keith right now. It's usually what I reserve for when he's in trouble.
Which is once a year.
Exactly, once a year, whether he needs it or not. So it is kind of weird to be calling him Keith right now, because he's definitely not in trouble. But so with that dynamic, we were born in South Dakota on a farm, which has a lot of interesting stuff tied in with that. Moved to Colorado. How old were you when we moved to Colorado?
I was a month out from turning 3.
Okay. So you probably didn't even remember South Dakota?
Absolutely nothing.
So I was 9 when we moved to Colorado. We were what I would say, we were definitely not. We were poor. I don't know how to say that in a nice way. That definitely shaped who I am as a human being. I know that it did as you as well. I know that it was different because of the age gap between, our oldest, who's 10 years older than you are, right? Obviously things get different as we're moving out of the house and they have less than 5 kids to be dealing with and whatever. But a big topic that I want to talk about today, and I know that, we've mentioned this, but would be kind of you being gay, what that looked like coming out in the house, what that looked like for all the way through, right? Like, I think people that are nowadays, we celebrate that. I don't think that was how it was back then. Mm-hmm. Obviously, our family was our parents are very religious. I'm not religious. I know that you're not religious as an adult, but that was definitely a big component of our upbringing, and had a big effect on things. But I think it's interesting because I don't think a lot of young people realize. Maybe they do, I don't know, the struggles that we go through to kind of lay the groundwork for stuff, you know what I mean? People that were gay 50 years ago, obviously not, obviously before your time, had a very different struggle than you did, mm-hmm. right? Because you came out 25 years ago-ish?
Yeah, right at 25,
right,
26 years.
Right, so it's like, I tell Wiley, like, if you're gay, you could just tell me. There's no really coming out. Yeah. Like, it's not... We don't live in a world like that. No. I think there's a religious component that still brings that in for people nowadays, which I think is extremely unfortunate. And for me, that's a big part of what I want to talk to you about, because I think we still do have in our current society people that are not okay with coming out, people mm-hmm. who have religious parents who make them feel less than, or that there's something wrong with them, which to me is an absolute shame. Like, it just, you know how I feel about that. It gets me, mama bear comes out in a protective mode for you. And so being able to talk about that and being able to have other people that are, younger people that maybe haven't done that, just kind of have an experience, a story that they can relate to, maybe some tips and things that you're doing, some things that you are still healing from. That's a lifelong journey for stuff. We get messed up as kids with all sorts of different things, and then you don't even realize that you're needing to kind of fix those things in yourself. And I think you're on a path where you absolutely are doing that, and that's, to me, it's fun to see from the outside, and I respect the work that you're doing on yourself. You understand that I'm doing work on myself, and I just don't even think I really have anybody that's in my inner circle that isn't working on themselves in a way that's like pretty neat, because it's hard stuff, but it's also, being able to share that with each other, being able to not have the shame and the guilt associated with that. I think, for us, we were raised with truckloads of shame and guilt and all of the things, and I've had an opportunity to speak with Mom more about that stuff recently, and she's telling me stories about stuff of how she was raised by her parents, and it was absolutely hardwired into her as well, so it's like that's helping me be able to show her some grace in the situation as well, because when you realize that your parents are really just doing the best that they can, which we all are, it makes it easier to digest, because they're not some horrible animals. So I realize that we all have things that they should have really done differently. But when you realize that they're just doing the best that they can, with what they have, it does allow you to show them some grace for stuff. So, my first question to you is, how old were you when you realized that you were gay? And is there a special memory or experience of that realization that comes to mind for you?
That's a little bit of an extended answer, only because I didn't really quite understand what that was. What we were taught in the religion and religious beliefs is that being gay is completely wrong, and that you can't like somebody of the same gender, and that you have to fight that if you ever have those urges, and this and that and whatever. And that's solely based on like 2 scriptures that are misinterpreted and whatever. And after everything has been switched from language to language to language and rewritten, and who knows where that even originated to start with. But I remember having those feelings when I was younger and being attracted to other boys and other men, or other boys at the time, because I was a boy, not going for men. And then it kind of came to a head kind of when we started getting the internet when I was 15, 16. And that opened up a new world of being able to chat with people and learn and have experiences and all of those things. And things that I never learned as a child. I never learned about my body was going through with puberty. I never learned what sex really, I understood because my friends would tell me, but when you're learning things from other similar age friends,
no one knows.
Nobody knows what's going on.
And we didn't have the internet back then. No. I don't think kids or people of the younger generation understand, like, if you didn't know, you just didn't know.
Yeah,
like
and you're relying on other people who probably don't know either.
You wonder, right? So somebody gets a nugget, which is all bullshit because parents never were honest. We got lied to about the Easter Bunny and Santa and like all of that stuff. So you get like one nugget and then you come tell your friends and then they're supposed to that's supposed to be how you get your information. That's outrageous.
So that opened up a whole new world for me. Because I didn't really have any idea, I started experimenting about 15, 16 and discovering like, okay, that makes sense. That's what I like. That's who I am. And well, I was probably younger than that because I came out at the end of my school year in 9th grade. So I was still 14.
Yeah.
And
are we 5 years apart?
6.
Yeah, that makes sense because I lived in Washington when I was 20, and I remember getting a call from Nancy about that.
Yeah, so that also opened up. It's really weird because coming out was a little bit different. It was obviously full of shame and full of I can't. You got to hold on to this secret and this burden, because it's wrong. Everything that I've been told, it's wrong. I can't be this.
Yeah,
and you think like, oh God. And you also hear stories because children would get kicked out of their homes and disowned.
Right.
And and commit suicide because, okay, well, I have this, I can't tell anybody, I'm going to commit suicide. Or I am this, and I did tell somebody, and then everybody rejected me, I'm going to commit suicide. And that's one thing, even though overall it was kind of a weird process, and the things that happened after that were very religious based, but I will say that never happened to me. I never worried about mom and dad kicking me out. I never worried about being disowned by them. That actually, there was one day, like the week prior, that mom's like, you have a secret. You're holding on to something. And not in a, you better tell me now, I know you're doing something, you're hiding something from me, but she's like, you have something going on. And I was like, oh God, okay. So I sent her an email.
This is all new stuff for me, so this is actually quite lovely to hear this story.
That's the lovely part about having technology start at that point, because then I was like, we weren't taught how to sit there and say, hey, mom and dad, this is what's going on, whatever. We never had communication in that regard. So that night, it was my last day of school.
On your freshman year?
Of my freshman year.
Okay.
And I was going to private school at that point. And I sent an email to mom's work account because having cell phones with email capabilities and whatever wasn't a thing. Yeah. So I sent her the email. I didn't get a phone call at school or anything like that. She picked me up from school, and I get in the car and I'm just like, oh God, I don't know what's going to happen here. And she turns over, because in the email, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but basically, here's my secret. I'm gay. I hope you can still love me, something to that point.
Right.
And I get in the car and she turns to me and says, do you really think we would stop loving you?
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's not something I am like sharing with everybody. And it's also like just something that is not a regular part of standard conversation.
No,
so
for sure. But that's important. That's important information, because that makes me feel better. Yeah. Yeah, it is. So that's where it's a little bit difficult, because it started off that way and then it went into, okay, now we're going to get you gay conversion therapy. I just can't even imagine
that.
Like,
and that was, what do you do at that point? Like I think I'm 14 still. I think that happened during the summer. So we went directly into that. And I think that guy was just scamming people out of money.
Well, he's probably gay himself.
I'm pretty sure. And I really, really, really hope that he wasn't using it as a front to touch little boys. Right. I understand this isn't the Catholic Church, but maybe he was a part of that. Right. So going into that, it was, okay, we're doing therapy and we're talking about what's happening, whatever. We never actually got around to doing anything therapy related. We would talk about school and how, obviously I was in school, because then I was talking about school. Sure. So then it was like, okay, we're doing 4 sessions. And this was not close to our home. We lived on the east side and this was way on the west side. Yeah. And I think it was in like church offices or something. And we would go over there and we would just chat and we would just chat. And after the first 4 sessions or whatever, I finally got up the gall to be like, look, nothing's changing. Like, this guy and I are just having hanging out. Right. You're paying him a lot of money to just hang out with me. Right. And this isn't a phase. This isn't, I'm experimenting, I'm a whatever. Like, this isn't happening. Right. And they dropped it. Right. It wasn't, no, we've got to continue forcing this and we got to do this and that and whatever. They just dropped it. Now,
that's good.
When going into other things, again, going into not really understanding sexuality and what I'm doing with myself and whatever, I was doing stupid shit, but it wasn't because I was trying to be rebellious and trying to do whatever. I was exploring and I didn't know any better and I didn't have those boundaries or anything.
Well, would you do it regardless of what your sexual orientation is, I think, right? Exactly. You're going through puberty and you're exploring and you're experimenting with things. And so I don't think that that's anything that's unusual.
No, at all. Especially for that age. Yeah. Like, hormones are raging when you're 14, 15, 16. I think I started puberty when I was 12 or 13. So a little bit earlier than average. Yeah. But when you look at that, it's like, I got punished for doing these things that I was just trying to figure out because I didn't know any better. I didn't know anything. And so went into, okay, now I'm experimenting with this guy and experimenting with that guy. And like, I don't know, like maybe it's not great that they're a little bit older than I am. Maybe it's like whatever. But getting punished for that stuff too. And not like I was getting beaten. Let me be
they got
clear
that all
about
out
that.
on me.
Yeah.
Let's
Thank
be
you
clear
for taking
about
that hit for
You're
the team.
welcome. Yeah.
But it was in the form of, I didn't get my driver's permit until I was 17 and a half.
22.
It felt like an eternity. But that was the whole thing of like, I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
Like I was just trying things and whatever. And then to have that punishment, even though it wasn't that big of a deal, but it was kind of a big deal because everybody around me was driving and I was working part-time after school and not close to home.
Well, I can't even imagine. I shouldn't say that. I grew up in the same house that you did. I remember getting punished for all sorts of stuff that I would never punish my children for. Also, I run a completely different program, which again, I don't think that I've gotten to the point in my life where I feel like they did the best that they could.
Absolutely.
But I look at that and it's like, the stuff that I got punished for is outrageous, you know? So the idea that like you're messing around with other boys and you're getting punished for that is outrageous, you know? And so, but I am happy to hear that the whole, like, of course we still love you and like all of that stuff, because I didn't know that component of it. I thought that there was much more, like I realized the whole, you know, conversion therapy, which is, you know, I don't know. I don't understand how growing up in a place where it's like, you know, that who you are at your core, right? Because you're gay and I've known you were gay since you were before kindergarten, right? I mean, I don't know how everybody else had their head in the sand and was, you know, like, oh my God, he's gay. I'm like, yeah, I got to go back to work.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you guys are figuring this out. Like, yes, but
and it couldn't have been even amongst our siblings. If mom and dad had no idea, and because they had 5 children and
had their heads in the sand,
working so much and trying to take care of a family, I understand that. But at bare minimum, all of my siblings should have known, because
agreed.
What the hell was I doing? I was baking.
Right. But what was the other reactions? Because I know that when Nancy called me, I remember exactly where I was. I was living in Washington. I was at work. They made a big deal about you have an emergency phone call and like whatever. And I get on the phone and she's crying and she's telling me Keith is gay. And I'm like, yeah, no shit. Can I get back to work? This is what you've pulled me out of a meeting for? Like, I thought it was an emergency. Yeah. I've known that for 10 years, you know? So like, what was the other reactions from Maureen and Nancy and Brennan? Brennan still lived at home at that point, yeah? Because he's only a few years older than you.
He's 3 years older than I am.
Okay. So yeah, he would have probably been like a junior or senior in high school.
Yeah, he was probably a senior, or that might have been his graduating year.
Okay.
So, but I don't remember him being around. I don't remember. I vaguely remember it was, doesn't change anything. You're my brother. I love you.
Absolutely.
Like nothing.
Right.
Nancy, I don't really remember anything in particular about like us having a conversation. Maybe we did, but there's just nothing that stems out from that. Maureen, I remember she was dating Michael, and like, not even dating. They had just kind of met.
Dating Michael or Marcus?
Michael. No.
I think it was Marcus. Because she would have only been, well, it doesn't matter.
It was Marcus.
Yeah. Because Michael was when she moved down to Colorado, or down to Arizona, and that was after that.
That's right, because she was 8 years old. No, she would have been, I think it was Michael. I distinctly remember Michael, because they had just met.
Could have been, because.
And I think she had just come back from New Mexico.
Okay.
And they had just met. They were just friends at that point.
Okay.
And I remember her Mercury Grand Marquis boat. That, I don't know why those 3 things stick out, but I remember we had some loose discussion in the car of like, no matter what you are or who you are or whatever, we still love you. And that was the only time that I remember Michael not being a piece of shit.
And then things went down.
Well, and then they started dating. Right. So, but the unanimous decision or conversation was, okay, like whatever, that doesn't change anything. And then just kind of went on to live life. But it always kind of felt, and maybe it's because I'm doing it to myself, but because I was never really dating anybody and I never was in a relationship or anything like that. But it always just kind of felt like, here you are. this is your gay part over here. We don't talk or
Right.
discuss that or see that side.
Right.
You're a good human being. We love you and whatever.
Right.
Primarily with mom and dad. Everybody else is like, especially you, because we've lived for so close for so long.
Right.
That I can talk about anything. But even with Brennan, like, he doesn't, not that I'm getting as vulgar and crude as I would with you, but it doesn't matter. Like, we're all grown ass adults over 40.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Even my nieces and nephew, primarily your son, like, I can bring up stuff, and it's not, again, not getting vulgar and crude.
No, but
maybe with your eldest.
Yeah.
Because
she's 28. She's a grown ass woman.
She's a grown ass woman, and
and
I try not to be too
I
crazy. Like, I try to reel it in a little
I understand.
bit. But just being at that point where I recognize that there are other children. All of these children have grown up with me knowing that I'm gay.
Yeah.
Not a single one of them was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And maybe John doesn't know fully or understand. He's a child.
Right.
And I don't have anybody in my life. Well, no, he knows because he was at Christmas.
He was.
So.
No, but that was a whole thing because that was just a year and a half ago. And that was the first time that you had brought a guy around, and you're 40, so that also is a whole thing that I think, like you said, you having, okay, here's my life as your brother, as your son, as your uncle, as your whatever. Yes, I'm gay, but whatever. But it never has been something that you've brought that into the family for stuff. And I don't know if that's, by design or if that's just not something you've been comfortable with, or.
I think there are two parts of that. So the first part of it is never having anybody around long enough. I've dated one guy, and we weren't like exclusive or anything for like 4 months. We'd go out on dates and do whatever. And outside of that, my dating life has been basically non-existent.
Yeah.
So that was the probably the biggest portion of it. I know if I had met somebody earlier and was really in, like, thinking, yeah, this is going to be long term. We've been dating for 6 months or more or whatever. The other part of it too is a conversation that I remember having with you or Nancy. I don't remember. It could have been both. Of not bringing somebody around every month or so, every 3 months or so, like with the kids, because the kids were a lot younger and whatever.
That was definitely Nancy. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. Parade them through.
Yeah,
have a gay pride parade through my living room. I don't give a shit.
And it wasn't necessarily that was like I didn't find that problematic.
Right.
I completely understood and I agreed. I also don't want somebody to be introduced and then like, oh no, we broke up. Like, that's a lot of drama.
Do you feel like it would have been different if it was straight though? Like, is that a conversation that was had with Brennan or with Maureen, or you know what I mean? Like, or that's specific to you being gay? See, that's right. So that's for me the piece of it where it's like being able to really see, okay, what does that do to you? Yes, I see that you understand the logistics of that, but it's not the playing field is not even.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Which is bullshit to me.
Yeah.
That I believe that, that to me I think is what kind of provides some separation there, which I don't love.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But again, maybe because I've known that you were gay since came out of. I'm not even going to say it.
Yeah, please don't. Somebody already said it this morning and it grossed me out.
Oh, no. I'm not starting
I'm trying to hold on to my gold star.
I love it.
But no, that's the other part is like the speculation of that. And okay, would it have been different if it were with a woman? Yeah. I would hope that it would be treated the same. And it wasn't because I was gay. It was because they didn't want children being attached to somebody new, regardless if it was a man or a woman or anything in between. We just want, like, be sure that you want them in your life and that you would like to continue on and all of that, and not just like, oh well, flavor of the week is here. Yeah. Regardless, that's what I would hope it was, because I never got the sensation that it was, oh, you're gay. We must not bring other gay men around too much. Yeah. I brought my gay friends around.
Right.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Like, So it didn't really make a difference. And I remember that too. Like, I would bring my gay friends around mom and dad when I was 15, 16, 17, 18. I wasn't like, here's my gay friend Joey and here's my gay friend Gabriel. Like, they were my friends. Yeah. You knew. But there was never oh, please don't bring your friends over here. Yeah. Or, oh, we don't want you to have your birthday party over here.
Do you think that it would have been different had they not been so religious?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because
How so?
because religion, and I know there are a few that don't teach this. Religion teaches that homosexuality is a sin and it's an abomination
Yeah.
and that you can't do whatever. So when that's drilled into you your entire life,
Yeah.
and you do nothing to search outside of that and to understand and to whatever, not demonizes, but like it dehumanizes
Yeah.
people.
Right.
It's the same thing that happened, and I don't want to compare homosexuality with the Holocaust, but when you look at that, like that was a dehumanization of Jewish people. That when we don't care about taking over and enslaving, whatever, that's a dehumanization of people. So it's super easy for people to get really upset and really controversial and really like, oh, you guys should all die. Like, you do realize that I'm still a human being, right?
Right.
Like nothing's changed. I'm still a human being.
Yeah.
I still have red blood. I still have the basic necessities that everybody else does.
Right.
Nothing has changed except for the idea that you have that you're right.
Right.
And that your supreme being is know all, tell all, see all, and correct 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And it's just that simple. Without that component, I've seen other friends who don't have religious parents. I don't have conversations like this with them. I don't have to have, oh, well, how is your religious upbringing?
Yeah.
How is this? How is that? And then I also look at it there's a reason why none of the children are religious. We all saw outside of that. And we all saw
We all noticed that the emperor wasn't wearing any
clothes. Well, and we also we would love for women to be treated equally. We would love for gay people to be treated equally. Like at the core of things, we're all still human beings. And this idea that we're somehow better because of this religion that we're saying is the one. And it's all of them, like most of them. Most of them say that they're the best one or they're the true one. But if you don't have those ideas being fed into you from birth, basically, who are you to say? It's the same thing for racism.
Yeah.
Like I noticed a lot more racism in all of my siblings than in me because I was really young when we moved out of South Dakota.
Right.
I had Chinese, Black, Mexican, Hispanic, like I had friends of every spectrum of the rainbow. Right. You guys didn't start off that way.
I didn't see a black person until I was 10.
Exactly.
Like we didn't have TV. There weren't black people in South Dakota. No. I remember the first time I saw a black person, I was like,
and the only thing that we grew up with was hatred towards Native Americans.
Right.
So when you look at that too, it's you look at trying to like expose yourself to more. You get but you also have to make a conscious effort to do better.
Right. Well, you reprogram that stuff because it's like what came in is not necessarily what you want to go forward with. You know, the organized religion component of that, you know, for us was a lot of shame and a lot of guilt associated with that. I remember, you know, I still to this day have something that's really, really hardwired inside of me that makes the man the head of the household, and he's the one that kind of makes the final decision, and he has a little bit more weight than the wife does in the house. That's a whole religious component of stuff that was brought in, and I look at that and I have to like check myself a little bit sometimes because there's not a part of my world where I don't cover at least half and then some. I don't have to fucking check with anybody. That's outrageous. Yeah. You know what I mean? The idea that like I'm going to be subservient to some man in my house, but that's literally how the organized religion component still comes in. So women are not equal in that situation, which to me is like, I mean, I couldn't move out of the house fast enough. You know, they're pushing this stuff on me, and as a teenager, I'm starting to get my own views on things and whatever, and it's like, no, you're going this way. And it's like, don't touch me. Get away from me. Like everything about our upbringing and organized religion for me was such a crock of shit. I couldn't get my head around it. And then it definitely was like, no one else realizes that the emperor's not wearing any clothes. You know, it's put your head in the sand and believe these things that are just so antiquated and such crap. You know, it's like, this is not how I'm going to be. And so but you have to kind of like pull those things out and reprogram the things that you were hardwired with of like, this is how this is supposed to be, because that's not how it's supposed to be in my world. You know, I remember talking to Dad, they came up like a year and a half ago up north, and we were talking about the moral compass, you know? And I said, whose moral compass? And he says, the moral compass. I'm like, there's not just one moral compass. You think everyone in the world goes by yours and that's why things are falling apart? I'm like, people are not all raised the same exact way. Everybody has all of their different stuff. And I think I blew his mind a little bit because it was just like, and I'm telling him, stay in your own lane as long as you're not hurting other people. You believe what you want to believe. You believe what you want to believe. Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be those things. But I definitely don't agree with shame, guilt, all of the stuff that comes from the church, because they're all so full of shit anyways.
Yeah.
They're all doing stuff behind the scenes that shouldn't be
Lies,
done anyways,
hypocrisy,
right? I mean, it's just,
everything.
for me, it doesn't represent anything that I would want to have anything to do with, I feel like I was having a conversation last night with Cameron about how men are raised and boys are raised in this.
Horribly, by the way.
How much?
Horribly.
It's true. No, it's totally true. It's interesting because I look at that and I look at, one of the things that has been a really big topic for me recently is emotional intelligence, right? And I remember, seeing mom growing up, and she was all over the place and did not have a handle on her emotions at all. It looked very messy. And so for me, I just didn't. If emotions were coming up, we just push those down and we just don't deal with that stuff. And I continued that pattern for a long, long time, right? Which obviously is not the right way to handle. That's not emotional intelligence either. That's, I'll show you.
Contrary.
Exactly, right? Which isn't good. But so we teach so I've always had this thing about like really wanting to help women, but I look at men and boys and how we're raising them as well. They're raised in the same bullshit that we are as women, just on the opposite side of it, you know? So boys are treated like, don't be a pussy and stop crying. I'll give you something to cry about. It's like, I don't need something to cry about. I'm already crying. Yeah. You know what I mean? Maybe let's talk about what to do with that stuff. We're not taught any of that, or we weren't at home or in school or any of that kind of stuff. And I look at that and I think we wouldn't have nearly any of the problems that we do now as it relates to that, because we don't know how to handle any of that stuff. Nothing. And I look at grown men now who are 50 and 60 years old who, Cameron was saying something about a friend that he was talking to who's like, I don't feel stuff anymore. Like, I don't feel anything. He's spent his whole entire life, number one, being raised as, we don't do that. We don't talk about things. We don't express our emotions. We don't use those as a compass like we're supposed to. And then you numb. Right? Then we just numb. We figure out whatever your numb of choice is. Maybe it's food, maybe it's alcohol, maybe it's whatever it is, shopping or, sex or any of the things that we're going to numb for. And then you get to this point in your life where you don't have a sense of wonder or a sense of awe. You're not curious about anything. You're just rinse, lather, repeat. Right?
I'm already there.
I know, right? Exactly, right? So, but that's why you're doing the things that you're doing, right?
Exactly.
Which is a question then, what are you doing? Because I think that you see the other side of that.
Yes.
I think you realize that there's more than the rinse, lather, repeat, which is a big part of my last several years of really being on this journey of realizing, I used to think that was it. I used to think rinse, lather, repeat, whoever does the game best, whoever gets the most money, whoever does like blah, 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 blah. I understand the rules, I'm going for it. It's not like that at all. I totally see that now, which is excellent, right? Which is what has us here talking on this couch, because I feel like I've gotten the cheat code a little bit, and I want to share it with other people, because I've done enough work on myself over the last several years where it's like, holy shit, you can really feel some high highs that are, alcohol and drugs don't touch how great you can feel if you're, do the work to kind of clean out all of that shit that's at your base, We all have all of this childhood trauma and other things, because regardless of whether you realize how much it affected you, that you were raised in a church, in a community, in a family that says who you are at your core is wrong. Something's wrong with you. You're defective, right? That is a lot to unpack.
Yeah, it is.
Right? And so I know that you're doing that. And what do you feel like you've been doing that's working? What do you feel like that you've been, if you're willing to share that, just because I don't think a lot of people understand, like, if you don't pull all of that shit out from your childhood and kind of reprogram stuff, examine, figure out, get curious about why that makes me feel that way, or whatever that is, if you don't do that, you're dragging that around whether you realize it or not. Everywhere. You drag it everywhere. And it gets heavy. And so for me, like, as I started doing that, as I started examining things and saying, that doesn't fit, and that doesn't resonate with me of who I am as a person, and this does, but let me tweak this a little bit and put it back. I almost feel like it's a game of Tetris, it's like pulling these things out. Does that work for me? Does that not? Okay, great, put that back. Nope, get that gone. So what are you doing to kind of heal the part of you that was raised to think that something was wrong with you and that you were defective? And do you feel like you've made good progress on that?
I haven't done specific work on that, because I'm not in any sort of intensive therapy or anything like that, and trying to work backwards a little bit, trying to figure out, like, okay, why, like, let's fix some of the immediate present issues so that I don't continue just stacking on and making more mistakes and whatever. So the things that we talk about are with finances and with why I feel the need to pay for people's way on everything and be helpful and then get bitter that they don't pay me back and all of those things, and recognizing that behavior is stronger with certain people than it is with others, and with people who've been in my life longer than others. But also, like, hey, when you're looking for friends, don't go for friends who constantly need to suck at the teat. Yeah. And figuring out just simple basic things like that of, okay, what are your 6 requirements to be your friend? What are you talking about? Right. If you're nice to me and I'm nice to you, then we're friends. It doesn't matter if you're kind of a piece of shit, like just treat me okay a majority of the time. And it's like, no, you need all of those. There's a reason why everybody's so miserable with all their friends and they fight and they block each other and then unblock each other and whatever. None of that is healthy because we don't have a way to select healthy relationships and continue to build those. So a majority of my stuff is working on the current surface level stuff, more recent stuff, identifying like, okay, maybe I've been going back 20 years, like, cause I wasn't always doing this. Yeah. It started about 20, 25 years ago. Yeah. And also just working on what can I do to improve my life right now? Because if I'm not having any enjoyment, if I'm not in a good mental place now, there's no point in going back and doing all of that. I understand there is, but if I've got all of this stuff up here that's really blocking me up, going down here, great. I've worked on all that and whatever. That doesn't fix all this. And this is a lot easier to fix.
Well, I will make a suggestion to you just in that, what you just said. I would suggest starting to pull some of the base stuff out, because I think what you will find is that it will fix some of that surface level stuff with you not even realizing it. You know what I mean? So if you look at this mound that you have to attack, right? And you're like, holy shit, there's so much stuff, right? And you're just, and you're mowing the weeds is how I use that analogy, right? You're mowing the weeds because it's like, okay, this friend and I'm getting used here and I got to figure this out and whatever. If you pull the weeds, it really will rock your world. You know what I mean? And so again, there's all sorts of modalities that are available to be able to kind of help you work through some of that stuff. But I think it would really shift things up for you a little bit, because it's like, if you're just cutting from the top, you're going to do this till the day you die. Not that this journey isn't a lifelong journey, right? As you're working on yourself, it 1000% is, but you might find that it really is going to kick things into high gear, which to me is where the fun is, because it's like, the more that I do, the more that I want to do. Like, I'm addicted to working on myself because I watch how that impacts not only me, but then the people that are around me. You know, Wiley has lived at home during the time when I have done the most work on myself. And that young man is the most emotionally intelligent teenager I've ever met in my entire life, because he has seen the stuff and because he and I talk about all the things, and there is no shame, or there is no guilt, or there is no any of the things. Like, he's my buddy. He can talk to me about literally anything. He has a village, right? Being able to have other people, other adults that you trust, that your children can talk to. Because if you're sending your kids off to talk to their friends or figure stuff out on the internet, you've lost it. You've lost it as far as I'm concerned. You know, I don't remember who I was talking to the other day, but they were saying something about something that their kid brought up that made them uncomfortable. And I was like, no, don't be uncomfortable. You can fake it till you make it and be uncomfortable when they're not there. You dive right in and talk about whatever they'll let you talk about with them, and be honored that they did, because we need more people that are emotionally intelligent enough to have those conversations with you, to do the hard work, to work through things. So, you know, doing some things, I know happy birthday, by the way, because it is your birthday, but like going and doing Reiki, right? That might blow your mind, because that's the shit that it's like, it's going to pull out some of that stuff of like, how did that make you feel? The real, how did that make you feel? Which is, I'm going to guess, not good enough, inadequate, all of those things. But then that leads into why you don't feel like the friends that you pick, right? You don't understand this surface level. Why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep, numbing with buying shit I don't need? Or why do I keep numbing with whatever it is, right? If you pull out some of those core things, shake them off, twist them up. Sometimes you throw them out. Sometimes you reprogram them, put them back, whatever. You're going to find that the rest of that stuff at the top just kind of fixes itself. So it's, to me, I look at some of that, and I look at all of the people that are in my circle that are working on themselves, and it's the joy of my life. It's the honor of my life. It's like Brittany and Emily are both working on stuff. They have all sorts of trauma and shit from when they were a child. As you can imagine, being raised by me as an alcoholic and all of the shit that I had going on before kind of waking up, you know. And I'm so proud of them for being able to do that. But you have to kind of shake the tree and work on a lot of the big stuff, you know.
Especially at that age, because I think if we had all known or had the capabilities of being able to work on stuff at that age, like I wouldn't be doing this at 41 and still trying to figure out what that looks like. And it is difficult because I would like to get a little bit deeper, a little bit faster. And maybe at some point I just need to say, you know what, I understand that it's going to cost me a little bit more, but I need to do therapy every week.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because we come up with stuff, and the way that she phrases stuff is, it's like, oh, well, that was really simple and that was really basic. Why didn't I come up with that myself? But when you're not thinking in that way, like you can't come up with everything yourself. But also getting to a point where I'm managing my life better.
Yeah.
I have gotten on autopilot many years ago, and I don't have control over everything. I don't have control over my finances, and I haven't for years. Because of all the things that were going on.
We're
it wasn't because like,
repeating.
oh, I'm just really stupid. No, I'm not that stupid. I'm actually, I know I can manage this better.
Sure.
But I've been on autopilot. I've been frozen. Like we had a session last week, and she's like, we're going to work on thawing you out a little bit, because all of these responses that you have where you don't really feel anything, because she constantly asks me, when you went through this, what did you feel? And I'm like,
well, because you didn't do the emotions either.
I don't feel anything. Everything got pushed down for decades.
The emotional intelligence is crazy. And it's like, I'm working with people right now that are dealing with some stuff, and it's like, shit, now I have all of this emotions that's coming up, and it's like, yeah, that's normal, just so you know. And it sucks while you're going through it, but it will level off, right? I went through that period too, where I was like, I'm crying all the time and I'm all of these things and whatever, but it's like, you have had all of these emotions this whole time. Just because you didn't deal with them doesn't mean that they're not there.
Exactly.
You push them down, they're going to come up. They're going to come up with, and they need to, and they're going to come up with pain, and they're going to come up with whatever. But if you're willing to put that work into yourself, it's outrageous how cool it is, you know? And so it's like leaning into that discomfort, you know, being curious about things. I talk to people about things that are their triggers. That's a big thing of like, don't bump into my trigger, don't whatever. Fuck your trigger. Let's be honest. Like, and you should have that same attitude, not just me having that attitude about your trigger. You should have that attitude about your trigger. Yeah. If somebody does something to me and it feels like, ooh, that didn't feel good, I get curious about that. Why is that making me feel that way? That's my responsibility to do, not to make sure that all of my people that are in my circle understand what my triggers are and what to avoid. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's outrageous. I can barely remember people's names and birthdays and stuff.
Manage people's triggers.
Absolutely, but isn't that crazy though? Yeah. I look at this surface level stuff of people, like you talk about friends who did this and then they got mad because you didn't do this and whatever. Oh my God, blow my brains out. Yeah. Blow my brains out. The level of friendship that people have right now, I couldn't stop it. Like I can't even deal with it. People come try to talk to me. I'm like, nope, I'm not even on that level of stuff, and I have zero interest to be, because can you believe Cindy did this? But Scooch, shut up, get out of my energy field.
Go get a life.
But that's the whole thing. The problem is everyone just keeps building all of these triggers, and it's like scaffolding, right? And so somebody bumps into something, and and then you build more scaffolding around that, and then you build more scaffolding around that. You're so out of touch with who you are as a human being to your core that you just keep doing this rinse, lather, repeat, building all of this scaffolding around you and expecting and pissed off because Michelle didn't realize that my favorite color is blue, not yellow. Oh my God. I mean, no one does. No one does, but it's like if they realized how amazing your life could be if you actually just get curious about why it bothers you that Michelle didn't know, or why the color blue bothers you, or like whatever that stuff is. So as you're going through therapy and you're doing all of those things, if something... So I always do it here because it just is where I feel stuff. But like if something bumps into you where it bothers you, get curious about why that bothers you. Do you know what I mean? Like I've had something that I'm working through recently where it's like, why is that bothering me? Right? And then something else happened that was kind of in that same thing. I'm like, shit, why is that bothering me? And then I'll get real curious and journal about it or meditate about it or do whatever. Think about it as you're driving in the car or just let your subconscious roll around on it. You'll figure it out. Yeah. But that's the stuff of like pulling the weeds out. And you don't need to be with your therapist to do that stuff. But definitely like just say, really making a concerted effort to say, I'm going to work on myself. I don't want to be this person anymore. Where will things end with this layer of like social media and like, where does it end?
Yeah.
I mean, people who don't have conversations anymore.
No.
If you disagree, screw you. I don't have any interest in talking to you. And it's like, we're not on a very good train as far as that's concerned. And everyone is so out of touch with who they are as human beings. Nobody has I don't know. It's a little bit scary to me. Whatever, it doesn't matter. I don't want to sound like an old person who's like, I'm scared of where the world's going, because whatever, it doesn't matter. Let it melt down.
People have been scared for decades.
Let it melt
of
down
where it's
tomorrow.
going.
I don't give a fuck. But it's like, it's still, I understand how amazing life can be on the other side of like really having some emotional intelligence and really being able to figure out whatever your triggers are. I always say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Just go ahead and take a look in your life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At like what's happening around you. And the teacher will appear in different things. And to me, I just almost laugh. Now that I have things figured out, my eyes are open enough, I laugh out loud sometimes when the universe puts things in front of me that are my next thing that I'm supposed to be tackling, right? Because it's like, oh, you think I'm ready for this? I mean, I literally said that out loud the other day because something was put in front of me where it was like, big guy thinks I'm ready for this one now, so I guess we're going to tackle this. Yeah. But, once you start feeling how good it feels to set all of that shit down, you're throwing it out the window while you're driving, and you feel so much lighter and so much more amazing for stuff, so.
Yeah, that's where I'm trying to refigure out as a single person, a single adult who has to work full time, who pays bills, who is trying to eat better, trying to get into some sort of exercise, because this country is not built for doing either of those very easily. It's time consuming, but I still also had to make time to be able to say, okay, I'm going to sit down, and maybe it's not too much. I'm going to sit down and write for 5 minutes. Yeah. Maybe I don't get out everything that I need to write, but I've been wanting to journal. Like I have that yearning to journal. I have that yearning to read books, because when I see all these little quotes and whatever, a lot of the stuff I follow on Instagram is things that are helping you shift the way in which you think and being able to improve and looking at that. And I find it's interesting because even though I feel like I haven't done a whole lot of work on myself, I've done a whole lot of work on myself for many years, and it's not at the maybe it's not at the pace that I would like to, because I haven't committed to that. Sure. I also didn't know what pace I wanted to be at. I still don't. I'm still able to help people. Yeah. No, for sure. And it's super weird because I have conversations and I was like, well, did you ever think about that? And trying to get into feeling out, because not a lot of people are at the level where they can say, I just want you to listen. Yeah. Or I need your feedback. Yeah. Or I just want your presence.
They don't understand boundaries.
They don't understand boundaries, nothing. Yeah. But now we're getting to that point, because our automatic instinct is what we've been taught is, if somebody confides something in you, fix it. Yeah. That's what we all want to do. Let's fix it. It's not I'm here to listen. I just need you to listen. Yeah. But majority of the time, I'm able to kind of sense like they feel like they're open, and I haven't gotten to the point where I'm asking. I try, but I don't have that many conversations, but of asking, do you want my opinion, or do you want my feedback, or do you want whatever?
I have a slightly different approach. I just give it to everyone.
And that's basically where I am, and nobody has said, and I try to kind of backtrack every once in a while where I can say, like, if this is not something you're looking for, please let me know. Right. And also be in a constructive, non-judgmental way, which is also not how we're programmed. Right. And it's interesting, the things that just flow out of my mouth, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so wise. I know everything in the world. And then I get back to reality in my own life. I'm like, well, fuck that. Maybe I don't. But with other people, obviously, it's so much easier for us to be able to look at somebody else's life.
You got to take your own advice, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but it's easier to be able to digest that when you're not in the thick of things. Yeah. When you're in your own life, in your own head, dealing with your own stuff, trying to just make it in this world, and trying to like, okay, now we need to invest for retirement. Now we need to do this. Now we need to do that. We're 100 different ways. And then we're surrounded by people who don't give two shits that other people are in the world. Right. Even though now we're in an era where we're more willing and able to talk about things and be open and honest about things, the next generation is becoming more and more closed off, because they're allowed to just be on social media all the time and to be doing all of that. And that's where their self-worth comes from. that worth is worth zero.
Yeah.
That value value is zero.
Yeah.
And I hope that we can try to rein some of that in and pull some of that back, because I see it everywhere. I was at breakfast with one of my friends in San Diego, and it was a family of 4. The entire time, except for when they were eating, the children were on their phones.
Of course.
The entire time.
Of course.
There was no whatever. And when they were eating, they weren't talking. Like, there was no conversation. There was no, hey kids, how is it going? Whatever. Because we're also in a generation where both parents have to work. We didn't really have to do that before.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with the whole cell phones thing. Yes, parents have to work. That's excellent, right? But being plugged in so that you don't have kids that just do that, like,
they don't want to parent though.
That to me is a lazy way to do that. And it's parents who don't feel like they're in charge of stuff, and so they let the kids negotiate with them. Children are terrorists. Don't let them. I don't negotiate with terrorists at my house. And I'm not saying I do everything right, but you don't need to have that out at dinner tables. Have conversations. Ask your kids about what their day is. Look at the difference between what your child looks like if he's like this all the time, or is someone who's able to interact and have a conversation with stuff. You know, we were talking about that when we came in today about, you know, kids that aren't plugged in with stuff. They're in their basements on their computers, you know. No one's paying attention. Where's the quality of life with that? We're definitely not even going to have any emotional intelligence whatsoever, because people don't even know how to interact with stuff. You know, Emily has a friend who's like, she has so much anxiety and she can't function and all of the things. Well, we're supposed to work through that. We're not supposed to just medicate that. Anxiety is an emotion. We're supposed to actually, like, okay, how are you using that? Use that as a tool. Yes, that's an important tool, right? But how do you then overcome that? Not, let's just throw a pill on it. Like, do we not realize what we're doing to ourselves, where we're just like, have another pill, have another pill, have another pill. And it's like, I'm not trying to say there's not a place for that. You know, because obviously there's lots of mental health stuff, and I've dealt with that in our family with different things. I've also dealt with, okay, maybe we just need some more emotional intelligence on how to handle those things as they come up. But it's like, it breaks my heart for people because they don't know any better. It's like, here's this device. We give them to them as soon as you crawl out of somebody's vagina. Here's your iPad. I look at it and I cannot get my head around it. Yeah. What is that kid's future? Yeah. Right? That kid is
not able to function, non-functional.
No. And when you have these conversations with other people, I think people are starved for this kind of stuff, right? I find myself talking to people, you know, I go to the salon and I talk to the lady that's doing my brows and I talk to the whatever, and it's like they are dying to have real conversations about stuff, right? You don't have to agree with everybody, right? We're adults. I'm not going to try to convince you of whatever, but I certainly would love to be able to sit down and have a conversation and have you tell me what your opinion is and what my opinion is. Maybe I learned something. I found as I've gotten older in life, I thought I was going to like be closed off more and solid in my beliefs. I found it's just the opposite. People are changing my mind and my views all the time. I'm super open to all sorts of stuff, and I love that. I love coming from that place. Tell me something I didn't know. Tell me why you believe this so strongly, right? And I'll tell you why I believe mine. We don't have to change each other. We can just at the end be like, that's a really cool perspective. Awesome, right? People don't do that anymore because somebody says something to them, they get pissed off, they get angry, they come back with a baseball bat about you didn't agree the way that I think, and like, who gives a shit, right? Be able to sit at the table and have a conversation about things that are different, things that you believe in, things that matter, you know? Yeah, it's pretty outrageous. Tell me something funny so that we can end this on a funny note instead of everything so serious. I feel like that's going to be the challenge for this podcast. Yeah. It's like, you're a really funny guy. We laugh all day long, all the time. And then we come in, I'm like, let's talk about that time your dad died. Yeah. And shit just gets weird. So
what can be funny? It's hard because it just flows naturally. But then when I'm put on the spot, it's not quite as easy.
I know.
And then I'm like, oh, well, let me recount this tale that I had with this guy. I'm like, nah, maybe not. That wasn't. That was not a good experience.
Mary Jane's going to be listening. Be real careful about that.
Yeah, I thought there was something funny that I had, I think last week, and I don't know if I ever told you, but now I don't remember what it was. I told Casey, but
I love it.
I don't remember what it was.
Casey thinks you're funny too, which is great.
Yeah, she should. I'm really funny with her.
I know. There's a level of funny there that I'm like, I love that everyone's funny on certain things, and I'm like, please leave me at like an 8. Mm-hmm. I don't want to handle the 9 and the 10.
Oh, that's not a 9 and a 10. That's a 15.
Well, what? Okay. leave me with floaties on in the baby pool, right?
That's a good call because.
Right. I
I've
love
said,
it.
I don't know she just brings out the best,
Yeah.
best/worst in me.
I know. Well, which is lovely because we're not supposed to
Yeah,
have
no.
any of the shame and guilt associated with whatever you think is funny.
Or inhibitions,
Right,
apparently.
absolutely. Consenting adults or consenting adults, whatever you think is funny, by all means. I don't think that there's some universal moral code.
No.
I want everyone to be happy, and
Yeah.
whatever makes you happy,
Yeah.
is excellent. So I do want to say to our listeners, anybody that has suggestions, ideas, things to talk about, we are all ears. Our email address is ladies@letsgetnakedpodcast.com. Every week we're going to do a May I Suggest. And so you fed in really well to that. So for this week, may I suggest having a meal with your family at a table without phones, without technology. Our oldest daughter she always has the 3 questions. So it's what's been the best part of your day, the worst part of your day, and then there's always a third random question that somebody picks. Usually Brittany does, but it's huge. Talk with your family, talk with your kids, be open to hear what they have to say about stuff. You'll be surprised by the things that come out. And I think a lot of times when you're making those changes with your kiddos, it's going to be hard at first, but it's worth it. It's worth knowing who your children are, because if you don't, I believe that you'll regret it.
Don't make them navigate life alone.
No,
because that's what's happening.
That's what's happening.
And that's what happened to us.
Absolutely. Well, and now it's like we have this technology where it's the richest man on the planet has the same phone as an 8-year-old. And he has access to literally everything. So you're not ever going to have enough parental controls to block him down for stuff. You need to be teaching them things that are important. And the emotional intelligence, please, someone who can do something about this in high schools or in regular schools, hear this and take that up as a challenge, because emotional intelligence is something that at every age we can do. I look at that with the businesses that we run, and I've got grown-ass men who, somebody bumps into one of their triggers or something, and then they come back from this place, and I'm like, everybody count to 10.
Yeah.
You're causing your own problems here. And we do. We cause 90% of our own problems just because of our triggers and other stuff. Think about what that looks like. And try to work on yourself a little bit. Get curious when something happens. One of the things that I was working with somebody on was their defensiveness, right? Get curious about why you're so defensive, right? You don't have to fix anything. Just get curious.
Yeah.
Why am I so defensive every time somebody says, whatever it is, what is it about me that makes me defensive? Yeah. So knowing that we're not just rinse, lather, repeat, I believe that. I've seen both sides of that. I was rinse, lather, repeat for a long, long time. And I've lived an amazing life in the rinse, lather, repeat cycle, right? But when you realize you're on a hamster wheel and all you have to do is step off, right? That will be a big part of this podcast I will tell you different tools that I've come up with over the last several years of how to get out of the hamster wheel. Yeah. And I'm telling you, it's pretty outrageously incredible on this other side, and people that I bring on will talk about all of that stuff, what they're doing and tips about things that they can do to advance where they are. And so, getting suggestions from listeners about things that are important topics to them. If this isn't a podcast for you, don't worry about emailing me and telling me that. Just change the channel and listen to something else. That's not of interest to me. So that's kind of where we are. So with that, let's wrap up and we'll see everybody back here next week. So thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you in a few minutes on the flip side.
Thank you for having me, and happy birthday to me.
Okay, bye.
I'd love to help you get vulnerable. Let's get naked.